In this lecture, we're going to see how we can debug a C++ program through the CodeLite IDE. The program we're going to be debugging is really the same as we have seen in the last lecture in Visual Studio Code. We're going to be setting up a breakpoint at this line here, and we're going to basically follow our program as it executes and calls different functions to show all the local variables, the call stack, and the watch window. Okay, so let's head over to CodeLite and see how we can do this. Okay, here I have my CodeLite IDE opened. I have the code pasted in. You can paste this in and follow along if you want to see how to do this in CodeLite. The first thing we want to do is to set up a breakpoint. And you see that in CodeLite, it really is similar to what we have in Visual Studio Code. You click in the getter here and you're going to have a breakpoint. Once you do that, you can come to debugger here and hit start or continue debugger. You can also hit the F5 button if you want. That's going to start your debugging session. The moment we do this, this is going to start debugging using the GCC tools, because that's also what I configured CodeLite here to use. You saw the configuration where we set up CodeLite to use the GCC compiler. Now that we have this, we can use these buttons here to step into and see how things happen. But before we do that, you see that we have a tab here containing the local variables. You see we have A here, which is a 10. We have B here, which is a 12. These are our local variables. We also have a watches window in which we can set up our watch expression. If we hit the plus button here, we have a window where we can put our watch expression. So we can say summation greater than 10. Exactly the same thing we did in Visual Studio Code. And we can have our watch expression in here. And you see that it is false because now summation is not 10. Summation contains 0, as you can see in our locals here. Now what we want to do is to use the buttons on top here. You can use one to continue debugging. You can stop the debugger. You can pause the debugger. You can restart the debugger if you want. You can show the current line. The few buttons that are really important are the next button here, which is going to move to the next statement, or the step into statement here, which is going to step into a function. Now the statement we have here contains a function. We want to step into the sum function. So we're going to hit the step into button here. Let's do that. If we do that, you see that we start executing the sum function. The local variables we have are from the sum function. You see here, you see we have result. We can refresh this to have the data from our sum function here. And now you see that we have result, we have X and Y. These are the pieces of information we have in the sum function here. If you look at the call stack, you're going to see that the sum function is to the top of the stack, and the watches window here is not going to give us any useful information, but summation is still for us. So you can say that this is really true to some extent. Let's go back to our locals to see how things change. If we execute this line here by hitting next, we're going to see that result is going to become 22. Next, we want to step into the adjust function here. So we're going to use the step into button here, and that's going to jump into the adjust function here. We can hit next to see the input value here change. Let's try and refresh this. We're going to see that the value is 22 in input here, which is a reference to the result we have here. But the adjustment contains 2. You can see that here. I think that's what we should see. We're going to see that if we execute this line here. Let's hit next. Adjustment becomes 2. If we hit next again, let's do that. We're going to see that input is going to change. The changes are not going to be directly visible if your expression involves changing a pointer or a reference, but we can refresh here. And this is going to show us updated data. You see, input has changed to 24 because that's the value that we have in the variable that we are referencing from input here. Now we can hit next and finish execution from the adjust function. After we do that, the adjust function is going to be popped off the stack and the sum is going to become active. But now we are about to also end the sum function. So we're going to end that, and we're going to come back to our main function. Let's bring up our terminal window, which was opened when we run this, and we're going to minimize the CodeLite IDE here and make sure we can see this. So we're going to put this to the right here so that we can see our output printed out. And we're going to hit the next button, which is going to print out stuff here. So let's hit next. You're going to see that the sum is going to be printed, and we have the sum, which is 24, printed here on our console window. And if we keep going, we're going to end the execution of the main function, and our program is going to end as you see here. This is how you can debug through the CodeLite IDE, and this is going to be using the tools that come with the GCC compiler. And again, we were able to see the same information we saw in Visual Studio Code. We had a way to see our local variables. We had a way to see our watches. We had a way to see the call stack. We can basically do the same things. I don't think I showed you the watch window here, but we can see that. Let's try and run again. We're going to hit, we just hit next. Let's restart our debugging session by hitting this button here. This is going to bring up our window. And let's do that and really fix these windows a little bit. And we're going to step into the sum function. We're going to jump to the next statement, and we're going to step into the adjust function here. And we're going to hit next, next, next until we come back into the sum function. We're going to come back into the main function. And now that we are here, you see that summation greater than 10 is true because the value in our summation variable is 24. It is greater than 10. And our watch expression is really working. And this is really how you can debug your application using the CodeLite IDE and the debugging tools that come with the GCC compiler. We are going to stop here in this lecture. In the next one, we're going to show you how you can do the same using the Microsoft Visual Studio IDE and the compiler from Microsoft that is embedded into that IDE. Go ahead and finish up here and meet me there.